Hello, you guys, and welcome to another edition of Longevity Kitchen with me, Julie Gibson Clark. Tonight, as you can probably tell, we are going to talk about salads and the magical nutrient contents of greens. We'll talk about their anti-nutrients. We're going to talk about how to put a salad together, so kind of the structure, so that you don't have to make this exact salad I'm going to be making tonight. You can start putting together your own combinations, and this is kind of how I think of a salad. And then we're also going to make our own dressing. How easy is this? So easy. You'll wonder why you ever bought a bottle of dressing. And I would encourage you to really, if you are buying dressing and you just need that convenience, I'd really encourage you to look at those bottles and read the ingredients. If there are things you don't understand or you can't pronounce, you might want to just put it back. There are a few brands out there that are good. I think the one that I'm thinking of is Primal Kitchen. They seem to be, in general, pretty good. Most of the ingredients on there are things that I understand and can pronounce. So same thing, you can just read the back, and if it's olive oil, avocado oil, vinegar, and then some spices, you're usually pretty good, and that can be convenient. It is expensive. This is a lot cheaper to make, and again, it's so easy. So I'm going to show you how to do that. All right, so let's talk about the nutrients in greens. Okay, so most leafy greens are going to be containing folate, which is kind of indicated by the green color. If you see something, green vegetables, typically that kind of means like, oh, there's some folate in there. They also have a lot of fiber and some phytochemicals that are typically very good for us. Some of them can also have anti-nutrients. And anti-nutrients are things like oxalates and goitrogens. So oxalates are typically like very high in spinach. And goitrogens are typically high in, say, like a kale, raw kale. So one way you can reduce both of those is by cooking them and pouring off the water. However, what I mean by anti-nutrients is not to have you start kind of getting neurotic or trying to be perfect about your food. What I want you to be thinking about is this is something that you're going to be eating frequently. And in my case, in Arizona, I usually have a salad like almost every night. Usually, I don't know, at least 4 to 5 days a week, 8 months out of the year. Most of you have asked what I eat for dinner, and it's typically a salad with protein thrown in. And so because I'm doing that every night, then I do want to be thinking about anti-nutrients because they might have an impact on me. So, would I still have like a spinach salad if I went out to dinner? Yes, I would. And I would just know like, oh, oxalates, I need a little more calcium bind with those oxalates and to, urinate them out. And then goitrogens are something that block the absorption of iodine in your thyroid. So if I had, a raw kale salad, which I do enjoy every once in a while, I would just, look for some iodine-rich foods. So like, some seaweed snacks, or maybe I would be having some sardines. So something that's high in iodine to just counteract that. But I just wouldn't be doing that every single day. So I don't want to say these things to make you kind of be more neurotic or more crazy about what to eat and what not to eat. We just want to be thinking about if you're eating something every day, then you should probably look at those things, okay? And it's why I've chosen what we're going to have as the greens base tonight. So I've chosen romaine, and romaine is just kind of like that underpowered workhorse, or underrated workhorse. It, of course, it has folate in here, but it's also very high in vitamin K, which is good for your bone health. And like I said, it's got the folate, it's got a great deal of fiber. It has antioxidants, including quercetin. Now, maybe not on the level of, say, like a onion, but it does have quercetin in there and other antioxidants. And so I'll take everything I can get, right? You never know how it all works synergistically together. And who knows, maybe there's something in here that's going to help me absorb that quercetin a little bit more, make it more bioavailable. Who knows? But it also just tastes really good. It's like about 95% water, which also can be really hydrating. And I think that's what gives it its crunch. And in Arizona, it's so dry here and it's hot. And this is just a really nice cooling green to have with my salad. So we're also going to be adding arugula. Also, it's green, so we know it has folate in there. But there's bitter compounds in there that naturally stimulate digestion. It also contains glucosinolates that help with detoxification. I think they support your glutathione production, which helps with natural detoxification. They're high in nitrates, which help, again, with your blood flow and improving that. And then last but not least, it just adds that nice peppery flavor. I love that kind of just little punch of flavor in a salad. So if you haven't had these, give them a try. They're really nice. You can make a whole salad just from this. And in fact, one that we're going to make tonight would be lovely with just these. But I really love to add that romaine. But last but not least, we are going to add some broccoli sprouts. I've been kind of getting into sprouts lately, and mainly because they are just powerhouses, like full of nutrients. Now, this guy contains a ton of sulforaphane, and sulforaphane is really good for glutathione production. It also enhances that natural detoxification in your body, especially because it's like binding to heavy metals, which is really, really helpful. And it also activates longevity pathways at the cellular level. Now, I'm going to include a link that Rhonda Patrick has done. She's spoken at great length about broccoli sprouts, and it's why I started incorporating them into my salads. So I'll do that because she's going to do a lot better job at explaining the science and in those things. But the one thing that you do want to look out for with broccoli sprouts is there can be a great deal of mold on the bottom here. So you just always want to check when you buy it in the store to just flip it over, make sure there's no, you don't see any beginnings of mold, and try to get the freshest ones you can, and check them in your fridge daily. Now, you can put these in smoothies, you can put them, in salads, you can put them on your sandwiches, you can put them on, or you can just nosh on them like I do. And I just check every day, and as soon as I see any sign of mold, I throw it out. It's not worth what that might, bring to you. So definitely, you may or may not use them up, but I just try to think about, I think this was $3.50, maybe $4 in the store. And if I think of the amount of nutrients per dollar of this food, even if I only eat half of it, I've still got my money's worth. So that's what we're going to add to the salad. Okay, so the structure of a salad, let's talk about that. So of course you have your greens base, yeah? We're gonna make our greens base, and then added to that, we are gonna add a crunchy element. Now the crunchy element can be really anything crunchy, right? So croutons are typically in salads, but tonight we're gonna be using slivered almonds. And in fact, just so you know, tonight we're gonna be making a strawberry almond and Chèvre salad. Nothing new here. I'm sure you've probably seen that on a restaurant menu. But I just wanted to kind of give you an idea of how to think about the structure. So you got your greens, you got a crunchy element. That crunchy element can be any kind of nut, but it can also be, say, in a taco salad, you would be using taco chips. You could use pita chips. You could use those Mary's Gone crackers, seed crackers. You could use pumpkin seeds. I mean, the world's your oyster. So just kind of a crunchy element that sort of goes with the flavor of what you're doing. So strawberries and almonds go very beautifully together. So the next element that I want you to think about is something like tart and sweet. And so of course tonight we're going to be using strawberries, but you could use apples, you could use peaches, pears, any type of fruit, or dried fruit. Like I use dried cranberries in salads, especially in the fall. Those are lovely. So that is kind of your tart sweet element. And then last but not least, a creamy element. Now tonight we're going to be using goat milk, fresh goat milk cheese, or Chèvre, but you could use any kind of fresh cheese or any kind of cheese. Or it doesn't really actually have to be dairy. You could also be thinking about pre-cooked sweet potatoes chopped up, or say chopped up and roasted squash. That would be good. Or even say you've roasted some onions in the past, or any other type of roasted vegetable. Now that it's kind of softer, it just adds that soft kind of creamy mouthfeel. So eggplant would be another thing. So the world's your oyster in how you might want to put these together. And say you have a favorite flavor combination, and you might want to put it together as a salad. So for instance, if I wanted to make a beautiful fall salad, I might do pears and blue cheese and then maybe some pecans. And then we could do that, or we could make it with the dried cranberries. That's kind of a fall flavor. And we could use the squash as this creamy element, right? And then maybe some pine nuts. So again, the world, the combinations are endless, but if you sort of think of this structure, greens, crunchy, a tart or sweet element, and then a creamy element. So, by creamy, I just mean by mouthfeel. Let's get started on making the dressing. I'm going to bring you in a little closer so you can see how this whips up. And I'll just talk about the different proportions as I'm putting it together. Okay, we're going to start making our dressing. So I usually start with the vinegar. Now, we want to be thinking about proportions. Now, Julia Child's classic proportion is 1/3 vinegar to 2/3 olive oil. I find that a little bit too oily. And I also don't like half and half. That's too much vinegar. So I kind of go somewhere in between. So I'm going to probably do like a little over a half a cup of vinegar here. So again, because you're thinking in proportions, you don't really have to have measurements. I can put some measurements in the notes. I'm doing a little bit over a half a cup of balsamic. And by the way, I'm making a lot extra because one, this is just something that could stay in my fridge for months on end. I mean, there's nothing in here that would spoil. Second, I'm going to add some Dijon mustard. And the Dijon mustard is a really good emulsifier. Now to this, I'm adding about 2 teaspoons. I might add a little bit more because it also adds like a nice spice to it, but it's an emulsifier, which helps I'm going to add at least another. So we're going to do a full 3 teaspoons, which is 1 tablespoon of Dijon mustard. But the other way to emulsify a dressing is to add egg to it. And then once you put the egg in there, now it could spoil as soon as that egg goes bad. So I just use the Dijon mustard for the spice and the emulsification. And then again, so now I'm looking at this and I'm saying, okay, I have a little over half a cup, and I'm just going to add what would be up to 1.5 cups total. So again, you can see it's a little less than 1/3. It's a little bit more than 1/3 and less than 2/3 of olive oil. And you can kind of start with that 1/3, 2/3 ratio and, mix it up from there. And then I'm also going to add just the tiniest bit of maple syrup. Now you could add any other sweetener. You could use honey, is also great. Even brown sugar, again, that's just a titch. I don't know, that's probably about half a teaspoon. And then I'm going to use this little mixer because it works so well. Now you can mix this as you're putting the olive oil in. That's kind of more classic, but honestly, this usually mixes up pretty well. So I'm just going to let this keep going. And you can see how they're staying together quite nicely. But you can do this in a blender too, and then just package it up in bottles if you have some leftover salad dressing bottles. Or like I'm going to do, I'm just going to cover this and that's going to stay in my fridge. And I might add a little, I'm going to taste it, I might add a little bit more Dijon mustard. I like mine just a little bit more light in color than this. Give it a try. That is delicious. Oh my God, that is so good. Okay, I'm not going to add anything. It's perfect just the way it is. So that is a classic balsamic vinaigrette. Now, typically you make it with really great aged balsamic, and so it has a really nice sweet flavor. And if it doesn't, then another, cheater way to do it is use brown sugar with it. I just didn't really want to use brown sugar, so that's why I used the maple syrup. We didn't talk about it when we were making it, but let's talk a little bit, about the dressing and why it's good for you. So, I think we all know olive oil is good for you, the polyphenols, and I think maybe one day we need to do an episode on just polyphenols and what they are and why they're good for you and what foods are high in that. So the olive oil is very high in polyphenols, and there are some websites out there that talk about different olive oils and the content of polyphenols. I'll see if I can find some of those for you. Another ingredient actually is we used an acid. So then we used balsamic tonight, but you could use any vinegar you wanted. You could even use lemon juice, and even sometimes I've used orange juice or just a little bit of lemon, a little bit of orange or lime even. So something that kind of has an acidic component to it. That's your acid profile. And then we added Dijon mustard to emulsify it. And the Dijon mustard isn't just for the emulsification. It's actually, one, it's very high in selenium, and then it has enzymes in there that help the nutrient bioavailability of other things in the greens. And I'm not even going to try to pronounce it, or Myrosinase. I can't even pronounce it. I'll put the name in the show notes. But I'm told that that helps with nutrient absorption. And then just for a sweetener, I added a little bit of maple syrup. You could easily use brown sugar, you could use honey, but I like that this has just a few more nutrients in it than the others. So that is why that was used. So let's put the salad together now that we have our dressing, and it's really going to be pretty easy. The other thing we're going to add, again, for nutrient bioavailability, is some pepper. So we're going to add that to the salad. Okay, so first thing I want to do is chop up my romaine. Luckily, my strawberries are chopped because I prepped those on Sundays, and the arugula has already been pre-washed. So I washed this and it's been drying. And just, hot tip on your romaine, cut it like down the sides like that. And then so it's kind of already in more fork stable chunks, and then I kind of go back in there and chop it. So it's a pretty easy thing. And of course, the closer you get down there, the more crispy the bits. And I'll just kind of go through here too. Nobody wants like some huge piece of, romaine hanging off their fork. So we start with that. And this is like what I would eat for myself in a night. So, again, I eat a lot of greens. I'm like a little turtle around here, I suppose, eating a ton of greens. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to dump in my arugula. So it's probably like 1/3, 2/3. And then I'm just going to put a bunch of broccoli sprouts in here. So like probably just grab down there, and, these will all get tossed in together, but I will put quite a bit. All that sulforaphane, it's super good for you. So that, and you can smell it. It kind of has that little spicy smell. And I throw the nuts in. Now, if you really like that crunch, it's like maybe you could add them at the very end so that you kind of see them all on the top. It just depends. And then I actually, just so you know, hot tip with the soft cheeses like Chèvre and any of the other fresh cheeses, it makes it a lot easier, putting pepper in, it makes it a lot easier to use it if you put it in the freezer first. So I actually put it in the freezer. So I'm going to grab that. Just makes it a little easier to crumble, and doesn't get all over your fingers as much. So just put it in the freezer, and it'll soften right up. Just don't forget about it. I don't think you want to leave it in the freezer. I don't know what would happen actually. I'm sure it would change the structure in some way, but I just don't know how. So, but it crumbles a lot more easily. Let me wash my hands and I'll be right back and we'll dress this. Okay, so now we're going to add our dressing. So if you've just pulled this out of the fridge because you made it the night before, then you might want to just let it come closer to room temperature. Just mix it up again, make sure it's all, together, because sometimes they will separate, but hopefully not. And anyway, you just add dressing to your liking. I don't know, maybe I'm a little heavy-handed with my dressing. I feel like I always ask for extra when I'm in a restaurant. So I don't know if it's just them or if it's me, but then we just toss it up, and I mean, that is it. Like, obviously we all know how to make a salad. I'll make sure to put, all the equipment in the show notes in case you're curious, but I find these tongs, these are just so nice. The only thing about them is that your creamy element does kind of get stuck in these little bits, so you have to kind of clean it out. That is it. Now, again, if you want to make this like super presentable, save some strawberries and some almonds for the top, but I am just like going to load up my dish and hope that we get a little, well, that's probably plenty. So I'll just put a few strawberries on top. And again, if you want to make this like extra beautiful, you just save the almonds and the strawberries and just a little bit of Chèvre for your top. But that is it. That is our delicious strawberry, almond, and goat cheese salad with balsamic vinaigrette. But again, now you have the structure and you can think about how to make your salad dressings, how to make a salad. I'll make more for you in the months ahead to kind of give you some more ideas, but get creative. This is the time to really, experiment. I mean, again, as experiment goes, it's not that expensive, and, you probably at least be edible. You can eat it, and then you just try again the next time. So have a good evening, you guys, and enjoy